We're in James chapter 1, and today we're starting at verse 3. We only got through verse 1 and 2 last week, so we'll see how far we get this week. But when we ended the last study, we had come through the fact where James was saying to the people who were scattered, these were the Christians who were scattered because of persecution, and in it all, he tells them in verse 2 to count it all joy when you fall into these trials. And we ended by saying, wow, I'm sure that was really a great encouragement to them to count it all joy. Aren't you happy about everything that's going on to you? Well, I'm certain that's not what James meant. He knew that they would not be happy about what's happening, just like none of us, when things happen to us, we're not necessarily happy about them. But somehow in the middle of that mess, we have to be able to understand there's more going on than just what we see and just what we're dealing with at that moment. And so I love when the Lord gives me a why. When He answers the question of, okay, count it all joy, but why? Now, I know that sometimes in my life and in my Christian walk, the Lord doesn't always tell me the why. And there is an element of just trust and faith in the Lord that we need to have in spite of knowing the why, right? It's kind of like when you're a kid and you ask your mom and dad something, why do I need to do that? Because I said so. Have you ever had that said to you a few times or 1,000 times in your life? Yeah, me too. Because I said so. I'm mom, I'm dad, because I said so. And that's a good enough reason that moms and dads can often give. But every now and then, when mom or dad would explain the why, it just made you kind of go, oh, okay, I get it. And so the same with our Heavenly Father. He's not always going to give us the answer to why, and we have to just trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, right? But every now and then, and this is one of those times where He answers the why. Like, why would James say, count it all joy? What's the point of that? So let's look at verse 3. We'll read verse 3 and discover the why, okay? So it says in verse 3, knowing that the testing of your faith, actually, let me back up to 2 so we read it as one complete statement. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. There's the why. Why do I need to count it joy? What on earth would be the reason of counting it joy? Because the testing of your faith, that simply means that the testing of our faith is that we must cling to the truths of Jesus Christ in the times of our trials. We must cling to them and hold on to them. And how do you do that unless you know the truths of the Word of God? That's why it's so important that you're doing Bible study, that you're reading the Word, so that when you face these trials, you can cling to the truth of God's words. We must believe in the power in the Word and believe in the promises of God. Believe in the things that He's told us and He's said to us and He's spoken to us. Put our faith in them, believe in them, and cling to them, right? It says in Romans 5:3 that tribulation produces patience. That's exactly what James is saying here. He's saying, have joy, count it joy when you fall into trials, because you know that the testing of your faith is working patience in you. And Romans 5:3 says the very same thing. Tribulation works patience, produces patience. Apathy, if you are apathetic or if you have apathy in a situation, it's kind of a place of just becoming numb in your trials, right? But patience is to be triumphant in and over your trials. That's the difference, because sometimes when we are in trials, we just kind of we get into this place of apathy. We're just kind of numb. We kind of forget. We kind of just, want to go to bed and pull the covers over our head and go, wow, I don't understand this. I don't see what the good is in it. I certainly don't see what God is doing in me or through this. I don't understand it. And we kind of can just become numb. And that's a place of apathy. Well, He didn't say to count it joy so that you can become apathetic. He said so that your faith produces patience. And patience is when we come to this place of being triumphant in our trials. To be patient in our trials means that we just stay steady and hold on to what we believe and know. So that's an important question to ask you. What is it that you believe and know? Because in your trials, that is exactly what you're going to hold on to let faith produce patience. It says in John 16:33, you may know this passage, it's one of my favorites. It says, "These things," Jesus was speaking, "these things I have spoken to you, that in me," this is another reason why he gave the answer to the why. Why did you tell us all that, Lord? He said, "So that in me you may have peace." He said, "In the world you will have tribulation." You will. He said, "You will have tribulation." It's a fact. In the world, you are going to have tribulation. But be of good cheer. Count it all joy, because I have overcome the world. So if my beliefs are in the world, if my beliefs are even in things I've learned in school, or even things I've seen happen in my life experience, if my belief and my faith is in that, I'm going to be a mess. But if my belief is rooted and grounded in Jesus Christ, in His Word, in His promises, in His power, then I will stay steady in the middle of my trials and circumstances. Well, then it goes on to say in verse 4, "But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." Let patience have its perfect work. You know, when we bear all that God appoints, God doesn't cause things to happen in our life always. Everything that happens bad to you isn't His fault. We're going to get into that later. But when things happen and we are in the situation that God appoints for our life, as long as He appoints them, as long as they go on, as long as they take place, with a humble eye toward Him, if we keep our eye focused on Him in humility and we can rejoice through them, then patience has its perfect work. Because we're able to say, "Lord, I understand that you are in control of my life, and I'm going to keep my eyes on you, not on my trials, not on my struggles." You think about Peter when he walked on the water. When he took his eyes off of Jesus and he looked at the water, he looked at the storm, he started sinking and going under. But as long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was walking on water, which no one else had ever done at that point, to my knowledge, right? Other than Jesus. And so when we keep our eyes on Him, then patience has its perfect work in us. And then we're furnished with everything in our life that is necessary to run the race, to warfare against our enemy, and to persevere until the end. That's what this process of faith working patience in our life, so that we persevere till the end. And then it says in verse 5, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him." Now this verse can, if you're reading through it, it can kind of sound out of place at first, like, okay, wait, we're talking about faith and perseverance, and we will lack nothing. Okay, but now you're saying if we need wisdom. Well, a lot of times I think wisdom in this passage is quoted and used, and I've used it this way a lot, and I think it's absolutely applicable in this way, that we say, there's something I don't know how to do. Lord, I've got to go to work tomorrow. We're starting a new computer program. That is over my head. I don't understand it all, Lord. I need your wisdom to help me learn how to do this at work. I believe we can ask for that, and the Bible says He will give wisdom liberally. He will give you wisdom beyond your years, beyond your training, something that you're walking into. You need to have a hard conversation with somebody, and you're thinking, man, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. You can say to the Lord, Lord, I don't know, but I need your wisdom. And He will give that wisdom to you literally, liberally in your situation, and help you in the things, the day-to-day things you need. But in this particular passage, and in the context of it being put in this verse, in this passage by James, here's what I believe specifically it means. It's the wisdom, we're asking the Lord in the middle of all this trial and persecution and struggle, it's the wisdom to know how to use these trials for your glory. Lord, if I'm going to endure all of this, I want to endure it knowing that something good's going to come out of this, and it's all going to be used for your glory. It's easy in these moments in our life to get stuck in prayers of removal. Lord, please remove this from me. Remove this situation from me. And there's nothing wrong with that prayer. We can certainly, when we're sick and we need a touch in our life, we can ask the Lord, Lord, would you please heal me? Would you please restore me? And there's not a thing in the world wrong with that prayer. I think about Jesus in the garden. You know the moment when he's in the garden praying before they take him away to the crucifixion. And what did he pray? He said, Lord, if it be your will, let this cup pass from me. That was kind of that, if it be your will, Lord, you can remove this from me because I know it's not going to be easy. But then he said, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. That's that part where we get out of, Lord, if you would remove this from me, I'd really love that. But, Lord, instead, if you don't, if I have to endure something here, then Lord, give me wisdom to understand what you're doing. Give me wisdom to see beyond my natural ability into what you're doing and how I can use it for your glory and how I know you will use it for your glory. And then when we ask for that type of wisdom, then he gives that wisdom liberally to those of us who ask. And so then it says in verse 6 through 8, let's continue on in chapter 1 of James. It says, but let him ask in faith with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. So it says we're supposed to ask in faith without doubting. You know, we've talked about faith and what it means in this Bible study before. We've talked about it being Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I've used the analogy many times of faith being like online shopping. You know, you go online, you find something you want, and you put it in your little shopping cart. For those of you that shop online, you put that in your shopping cart. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's in your shopping cart, and you check out. And if you go check your bank account, immediately you see it's debited for that amount. That amount now shows that you paid for that item. It's the substance of that something you hoped for, because I've already seen in my checking account it's been pulled out, or it's on my credit card statement, and that's the substance of it being hoped for. The evidence of things not seen. It's not there yet. I got an email that says I ordered it and it's on its way, but it ain't here yet. So online shopping is the ultimate faith experience, right? I put it in, the money's gone, it says it's coming, but it ain't here yet. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. So when we ask in faith without doubting, you know, it's kind of like we have to change our can I to I can. Can I do all things through Christ? I can do all things through Christ because my faith is rooted and grounded in Jesus Christ and what he said I can do. What he has already said and laid out that through him I can do, and I can stand on faith and believe what I know. It says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, like the waves of the sea, driven and tossed about. You know, we can experience lifted up on the super highs of hope, and then we're dropped down to the bottom because we begin to not trust anymore. We can soar high toward heaven in faith, and then we plunge to the depths of despair because of doubt. That's that place of wavering. One day I believe, the next day I don't. One day I believe. We've got to know what we believe, understand the truths of the word, and cling to them tightly. Lord, help me. Help me not be a double-minded man. Help me not be so wishy-washy, but to keep my eyes on you, to keep my heart firmly planted in you and what you've said and what you've done, to look back at your life. Can you look back at your life and see all the amazing things that God has done for you and stand on those things and say, yes, I know that you have done that for me in the past? Or maybe you've heard great testimonies of other people that God has done amazing things. Cling to those truths and say, yes, Lord, I believe if you did it for them, you can do it for me. And as I'm enduring this trial, Lord, today, I'm going to count it all joy. That doesn't mean I'm happy. That doesn't mean I'm rejoicing that I'm here. But Lord, I'm going to make a choice to count it all joy, knowing that there is reason and purpose in my pain. That you will make me something. When I get on the other side of this, I'm not going to be the same as I was going into it. You're going to make me stronger. You're going to make my faith built up. You're going to do a work in me that this trial will produce in me. And it will produce faith that gives me patience to persevere. So if you're in that place today, can I remind you that you can ask for wisdom? Lord, I'm in this place and I need wisdom. You're waiting on a prayer to be answered and it hasn't. You don't see any movement. and you're getting discouraged and you're about to throw in the towel, but can I tell you today, you can say, Lord, I need your wisdom to help me through this, to help me wait, to be patient, to persevere, and to wait it out, because I know you're working things for my good, and I'm going to keep my faith and my trust firmly planted in you and not be like the waves of the ocean, tossed about with every little thing that comes down. I'm going to cling to your word. I'm going to know your word. I'm going to love your word, and I'm going to stand on your word.